Welcome to the 6th annual Cross Research Symposium. And I'm really glad that you were able to join us this morning. We have a fantastic program, and we would like to use the first few minutes of this event to just give you a quick overview of what Cross is about and why we're doing this event. And then we can start with the program. So awesome. So let me share my slides here. Let me see. This is going this way. And share screen. I think.
While Carlos is getting that together, I just want to let everyone know we are recording this. So you're aware of that.
Oh, that's the presenter view. Sorry. Let me just stop sharing and do this one. There we go. All right. Does everyone see this? I think. Stephanie, do you see this? Yeah, perfect. All right. So welcome to the Research Symposium. We have, again, as I said, a fantastic program. Really looking forward to see this all happening, and I think you will enjoy it. I want to give a quick introduction to Stephanie and me. Start with me, and then Stephanie can say a few words for her background. I'm an adjunct professor at UC Santa Cruz. I'm the founder and director of CROSS, the Center for Research in Open Source Software. And before I joined UC Santa Cruz in 2005, I was a performance engineer at NetApp. I've graduated 9 PhD students and 11 master students, and I'm currently advising 6 PhD students. My current research background is programmable storage systems, and there will be a session later today about that, and then also one on Wednesday. Then we do error native storage, which is sort of part of that programmable storage system research agenda. In general, my specialty is big data storage and processing, scalable data management, and distributed systems performance management. And then we have also more recently started working on practical reproducibility, actually in the last 4 to 5 years. So it's not that recent anymore. But we continue that research, and we have a session on Thursday, I believe, on reproducibility, and that's very exciting stuff. In the past, I've been researching in team processes and repositories, network intermediaries. So my PhD thesis was on web proxy, enterprise level web proxies, performance or resource management. Then we did also some work in automatic behavioral modeling of hard disk drives. So that was a PhD thesis by Adam Kroom. And then I did also some data management games. So a lot of other stuff, and I'm always happy to talk about that as well. Anyways, if you want to know more about me, there is a website, people.ucsc.edu/carlosm. And note that we have a new logo for Basque Engineering. Maybe one of the first people who use it. Also, the page of Basque Engineering has now a new logo, so it's you will probably hear more about that in the future. Stephanie.
Sure. Hi, Stephanie Lieggi, Assistant Director here at the Center for Research in Open Source Software. My previous work was actually working in a completely different field in nuclear nonproliferation at the Center for Nonproliferation Studies for about 15 years. But in that field, I also was able to appreciate and work with open source communities in various ways. And it made me really excited about the prospect when I switched over here to UC Santa Cruz start working with Cross, which was about 6 years ago now. Although my previous research was completely different, right now what I work on really is working to help our open source communities, enabling them to create sustainable contributor bases, but also promoting the use of open source and open source development in academic settings. So, and also one of my big pushes now is looking at diversity, inclusion, and equity within the open source communities that we work with. And I'm really excited to, I will plug the panel we will have tomorrow at the third part of the morning tomorrow, which will be a panel on community health and open source communities and diversity. So,
thank you, Stephanie. All right, let's give a quick introduction of the Center for Research in Open Source Software. It was established in 2015. And based on the experience that a student of ours, Sage Weil, had at UC Santa Cruz when he developed Ceph. Ceph is now a very widely used open source distributed storage system. And we wanted to create a structure within the university that will increase the chance of having more of those projects that have a high impact on society, on the industry, on everyone. And so this center bridges the gap between student research and open source projects, and it wants to amplify the translation impact of university research. So we are sustained by annual memberships by our industry partners, and Sage Weil started this off with a very good start of $2 million kickoff support. There are three things we do. We teach students how to engage in open source communities productively. We fund high impact research that have a likelihood to have some impact on open source software. And then we incubate existing research prototypes, typically results from PhD thesis, to develop open source communities around them and to stabilize them and to make them usable, not just the thesis itself, but actually the software that was created with this thesis, and make that software actually available and maintainable. So those are the three components. I'm going to go through each of those components in more detail. So first, starting off with education. We developed in the last 2 years the open source research experience. This is you think of it as sort of a marketplace for project ideas, where mentors, typically our incubator fellows, offer project ideas to the world, and students, undergraduate students anywhere in the world can contact these mentors and say, well, I'm interested in working on this, and then they can start putting together proposals that then maybe result in a summer internship. Then there's, we use that same page for project ideas to become mentor organizations for outreach efforts like Google Summer of Code, so that those web pages become really well known through those outreach efforts. And then we also use that web page with all those project ideas to collect other funding, not just Google Summer of Code, but also fellowship programs from other institutions. And so we actually get this marketplace of funders, students who are looking for mentorship and project ideas, and the mentors who are looking for getting to know new students and to get work done. And this has been actually working really well. So the other thing that we're doing is we're organizing workshops. One of the we did already twice is the commercial open source workshop series by Dirk Riele from the University Erlangen-Nuremberg. And that's been very popular. We have also created a new class called Open Source Programming at CSE 117 at UC Santa Cruz. In that class, students learn how to submit a patch to the Linux community, so to the Linux kernel, right? And so it turns out that is sort of a mission that, of course, you need to know pretty much everything that you need to know about open source being productive in open source communities. And so it's like a single goal. So it's very easy to understand for people, but then there's all this other stuff that they need to learn to do that, right? And it turns out that is actually a really nice way for people to really motivate them to learn how to use Git, how to use programming, how to use these, editors, how to use archaic email clients, because that's how the Linux community works. And it's been also a very popular course. We are going to actually this spring have a new edition of that course, but it's going to be different. It always depends on the expertise of the instructors who teach this course. There's a lot of flexibility. So instead of the Linux community, there's going to be communities for visualizations, open source visualization frameworks. And that's our first attempt to sort of generalize this concept of really teaching students how to be productive in open source communities. And then we have a guest speaker series, a lot of talks about technologies, practices, entrepreneurships, community aspects of open source. You will also see keynote speakers today that talk about this. It's very, very fun. And we're the only organization in the university who does this. So we really found a niche in that. Just a few more words about the open source research experience. And Stephanie is going to talk a little bit more about that later when we see lightning talks from students that participated in this program last summer. But you basically, the idea is that this open source research experience is a really good way for those incubator fellows to seed their developer communities. We have this really cool resource at universities. We have lots of students who are looking for project ideas. And but that's not only our university, but it's worldwide, right? And so this is a great way to jumpstart those communities. We have a timeline. That timeline is aligned with outreach efforts like the Google Summer of Code or Outreachy or other programs. But we also, it's a little out of date because we're going to start this year, actually November for 22. For our 22 program, because the industry actually needs a little more lead time to get into funding these, right? And so they need to basically decide who to fund by January. And so we, in the past 2 years, started too late. And we got pretty strong feedback from our members. It's like, no, please start earlier. And that's what we're going to do this fall. Here's an example of the webpage for the project ideas. And that can, we are planning to make this much bigger. We are actually working with currently with this computer science engineering department to have a web page that is also coupled with other outreach efforts, like faculty going to others UC campuses, for instance, to try to get undergraduate students to come to stay within the UC system. That's basically the UC-wide effort when they apply to graduate school. So we kind of become an umbrella organization for all these outreach efforts by following up with project ideas in open source. Moving on to research. So in research, we basically, this is where CROSS is most similar to traditional industry university collaborative research centers. These are research projects, right? They have only peripherally something to do with open source. We do select research projects. Primarily, we get we have a call for proposals twice a year. And we select research projects primarily by how well they align with the topics of interest that we negotiate with our member companies at CROSS. But who are primarily really interesting research projects. But then, we also look for projects, do they have some chance to have an impact on the open source communities out there? But we don't require to write for the students who get accepted in this program to write any line of code other than, what they have to do for the research. So it's not a coding project. It's really a research project. And the goal is to publish and to do well as a researcher. So we have currently 6 projects, although one has just graduated, so it's 5 remaining projects. And we have quite a few graduated research fellows. They are all moved on to successful careers. We have quite a number of publications, awards. So it's a really well run, really well working program. And then finally, we have the incubator. So the incubator is really the innovation of CROSS. It is not a traditional commercial incubator. It is an incubator that allows PhD students who complete the PhD to stay on for 2 to 4 years to grow communities around their research prototype. So many PhD students who finish their PhD have actually built significant infrastructure, but there's nothing really that allows them to grow that community around it, to make that infrastructure usable to the world. And so it's in some sense, it's a new path for technology transfer. The technology that they graduated, that they wrote a PhD on and were very successful in publishing papers about it, to basically make that technology directly available via open source. Mostly PhD students go to industry. Some of them move on to faculty, but you don't get tenure for growing an open source community around a research prototype, right? So you basically, here's your chance to, within like 2 to 4 years, to really establish an open source community that can then kind of live on its own and maintain this project, or maybe your project gets merged into an existing very popular open source project, so that that project lives on independently of your own career, right? And the incubator fellow might be becoming an open source leader and then totally center the career around that role, or it could be something else, but the technology is out there and probably stays out there. So we have so far 4 incubator projects. 3 of them have actually recently graduated. We just accepted a new one earlier this year by Oscar Elek. Fantastic project. And you will hear, there's actually a whole workshop in this week about his way of using slime mold algorithms to do visualization of really complex objects, including the cosmos. So I like this slime mold cosmos universe. So yeah, very cool thing, very multidisciplinary, really a very nice project. So let's see. Yeah, so one of the things that I wanted to point out is we have pretty high standards of accepting these incubator fellows into this program. And they actually kind of became stricter over time, because we realized what makes it actually, what makes an incubator project more successful than other things. And one of the things is how well you are aligned with existing ecosystems in the open source community. And the other one is how well does the incubator fellow practice best state-of-the-art technologies and strategies in open source. So this is something that they have to start, have to show that they are well on the way to be able to run a successful open source project, that they have really studied up on how to grow communities, and that they practice what they learned, and that they have actually a reference open source project that's already well established, and that actually has great interest in connecting with this new open source project. So this is like, they've essentially, when you compare that to commercial incubators, it's basically a test whether you did your market research and your customer, right? So the evaluation metric of these incubators is that it's the area between the numbers of contributors and the number of organizations from which the contributors come from. That's you know, if you have 1,000 contributors, but they all come from the same organization, it's not nearly as valuable as if you have 2 contributors from 2 different organizations, right? The more different organizations you have, the more stable and to more stable the open source project is, both from the legal aspect as well as from institutional aspects. And these are metrics that are well established and, you know, in other open source incubators like the Apache Foundation and others. All right. I'd like to spend a little time thanking Sage Weil for this incredible gift that he gave us 7 years ago with the $2 million that really started all this. Incredibly visionary, right? I mean, it's such a cool thing when he created a startup around his open source project, Ceph. And then the startup got acquired by Red Hat. He had suddenly a lot of money, and so he put some of that money into enabling other students to have a similar career as he had. He was as a PhD student already able, because he had done a bunch of other startups and sold them when he was actually already, I think the first one was when he was in high school or in college. So he's a very much a natural entrepreneur, and so he was able to actually just keep working on his open source projects after he graduated with a PhD. So we kind of took that as a blueprint for CROSS, to actually know how can we allow other students to have that kind of career. We want to thank our sponsors. Our current sponsors are Kioxia and Seagate. Past sponsors are SK Hynix, Micron, Western Digital, Huawei, Samsung, and Fujitsu. So actually the founding members, the 3 first members of CROSS were Toshiba, which is now Kioxia, and SK Hynix and Micron. And we actually also crossed a really nice milestone that we actually raised from our industry members more than we originally got from Sage. So we had a really tremendous 6 very successful years in terms of really getting open source into the research program at UC Santa Cruz. I want to also thank our advisory committee. We are very, very proud to have assembled a fantastic advisory committee with James Davis, who is a professor at computer science engineering and is very interested in entrepreneurship within academia. Doug Cutting, founder of Apache Lucene and Hadoop. Nithya Ruff, who is the head of the open source program office at Comcast and chair of the Linux Foundation Board of Directors. Karen Sandler, who's the executive director for Software Freedom Conservancy. Nisa Strotman, who's the VP for Technology, IP, Innovation, Strategic Partnerships at Visa. And Sage Weil, who's the chief architect of Ceph at Red Hat. All right, with that, I don't know why I can't, somehow I seem to have lost it. There we go. No. Oh, well. Somehow the last slide doesn't want to display. So with that, I want to give this over to Stephanie, who's going to talk about the program a little bit. Let me stop sharing. Okay. I think you're mute. Yeah.
Thank you. Hold on one second. I was hitting the wrong button.
Any questions while Stephanie is getting ready?
There's actually a question in the Q&A document.
Oh,
I'm gonna go take a look at it. So someone actually started using that. I was like, very exciting. All right, I think that should be good. So
I need to actually navigate to that. Let me see.
So I'm just want to go, we only have a few minutes before we get our keynote on. So I just want to give everybody a quick introduction into the event logistics. First off, I think all of you, since you've made it here, have seen the agenda, the symposium agenda document, which has all the Zoom links in it. It also has all of the links to the session workshop pages, sorry, the session web pages. And so each session has its own web page that has been created by the chair or the moderator. And it has a little bit more information than what's just in the agenda. And so you go there for the abstracts, the bios, and other information about the session. Note that all sessions will be recorded. So just keep, just be aware of that. Also, I want to give a quick shout out for the lightning talk session, aside from the great keynote we're about to have. Also, the lightning talk session that will again be in just a single room. So the single plenary session, which Carlos was talking about with our open source research experience students. Another thing to keep in mind is that we are, as I mentioned in the email I sent out to everyone, we are not going to use the chat function for asking direct questions to the speakers. We're going to keep that mainly for the just for technical issues that you will have with you might have with Zoom. We are using instead this Q&A document that each session will have. Each room has. So we have a one for the plenary, which is everything that's the green room, let's call it. And that includes this session. So if you have any questions for us or for our keynote later, that goes straight to that document and type it in. We found this to be really useful last year, and so that's why we repeated it this year, in part because it allows people who maybe are coming in late to see all the questions, which you don't have with the Zoom chat. It also gives us an ability to kind of keep it in a little bit more stable setting than the chat, which sometimes just kind of goes away. And also you can follow it and answer the questions right after. So again, we have somebody already asking a question in that chat room, so feel free to ask anyone. And I will post the link to that. I'm sorry, I didn't think to do this. I will actually put it in the Zoom chat, a link to that document once I'm done talking. So if you have questions for our keynote, you can use that. Lastly, about this one, and you have one for each track. So we have the plenary track, which is anything that's in, like I said, the green, on the agenda, the track one, which is all the blue, the sessions that are blue in the agenda, and then the track two, which is the purple sessions. And if anything comes up though during the sessions, feel free to chat with us, either myself or Carlos. You can throw it up into just for everyone to view as well. Carlos or I will be in one or the other tracks. Carlos will typically be in all the track ones, and I will typically be in all the track twos, and both of us will be in the plenary ones and in the green sessions. But if you still can't get a hold of us, or if it's something that's like if you're having a problem getting online, or sorry, getting into the Zoom rooms, please go ahead and just send us an email, either directly to us or to the cross info one, which we both see.